Today, I want to take us back in time to the ancient Near East, and I want you to envision what it was like economically, what it was like to trade, what it was like to exist financially in Israel in the ancient Near East. So Israel, like most other nations in the ancient Near East, centered on the trade of goods. It also was an agrarian society. So that means that they tended the land, they cultivated the food that it produced, they allowed their livestock to graze on it, and they used its resources to their advantage. It was also what you grew, you produced, you caught, you could, or even made from the land, you then took and traded at the market. This is how families supported themselves. Services were also traded at the market, like day labor in the fields in exchange for a coin. The wealthier sellers were given prime selling spots in the center of the market, close to the well and water. The further out you were from the center, the more difficult it was to sell, and the conditions for selling were more harsh. In the market, a person's reputation mattered more than one's money. That's kind of hard to imagine today, but really, money was not the currency. It was your reputation. A seller's success in the market could determine whether their family ate that week. How did people buy food in the ancient Near East? What happened when a widow had no coins, but children still to feed? Why did Jesus speak so much about merchants' debts and wages? We don't think about these things all that often, but that was real to the people of that day and age. It would be normal for a farmer's wife to walk 3 miles carrying 1 basket of eggs to sell or trade for the food that she needed at home. There'd be fish merchants displaying the fish that they caught at dawn that same morning, hoping that they'd sell before the fish spoiled. Prices were not fixed. Every transaction was negotiable. Sales were made through relationships, back to that whole reputation thing. A person didn't just buy bread. They knew the baker. They knew all about his family and his life. They knew whether his daughter was married. They knew if his parents were alive. They knew if he was in debt to the tax collector. All of this became leverage for the buying and selling of goods. Strangers often paid more. If you were family, you usually paid less. If you were desperate, everyone knew. Some would take advantage of this, and others showed mercy. The market was community, and the community made up the market. Life happened at market. The market functioned through this intricate system of honor and shame, still back to relationship and reputation. If you cheated someone, the entire town knew about it by evening. If a person operated fairly, their reputation would be good. If one took mercy on a widow selling oil and paid a fair price for that oil and didn't take advantage of her situation, their reputation was elevated. So you can see how intricate this the play is here, and every moment matters with your interaction with the community members and how you treat each other, how you respect each other, how you could dishonor each other. That all so mattered in your daily survival. And you can see how quickly the balance could change if your family fell onto hard times. Coins were rare in that time. The market system functioned more through bartering than the exchange of coins. So I have a game that I would like for us to play. I would like to invite up Lawrence and Aubrey, if you guys would come on up here. Okay, community, this is going to put you to the test. This is your stewardship challenge for the day. Okay, Lawrence and Aubrey each have a paper clip. We have 3 minutes They are going to kind of work each side of the worship center here, and their job is to trade this paperclip for something better. And then, for that better thing, they can trade it up for something even better. So, community, are you up to the challenge? Does everybody understand what you're doing? Okay, here we go. Aubrey and Lawrence, off you go. We have 3 minutes. Piece of gum, piece of clothing, raise your hand if you want them to come to you. They can't see you. Aubrey, there's some more people over in the center. Hurry, hurry, hurry! All right, here we go. Lawrence and Aubrey, why don't you guys come on up here? Let's see how successful you each were.
A mint to money to life.
You forgot this. You forgot this. You forgot that.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, Aubrey and Lawrence, can you guys hold up what you traded up for? Friends, they started with a paperclip. This is what it was like to exist in the ancient Near East. You took something that you valued and hoped that you could trade it for something that might feed your family. And look what they came up with. It's going to feed their family. It's money. Now, because they were so awesome to participate, they get to keep what they traded up for. So let's give them a hand. You go back and sit down. Thanks. Okay. How difficult was it for these two to trade a paperclip for something better? It really wasn't that hard, was it? Because that depended on our mercy and generosity as a body of people. Did we all work together to kind of cheer them on and help them to get something better? Even if you weren't the one trading, everybody was kind of invested in the game, weren't they? So it really impacted our final product when we worked together as a community. So to fully understand what the Bible tells us about stewardship, we must go all the way back to what Jesus modeled for us. The subject Jesus talked about the most while here on earth was actually money. More than half of the parables that Jesus taught focused on money and possessions, how people use it, how people try to hold on to it, how it can bless people, and how it can become an idol. He said 16 parables, to be exact, that all focused on money and stewardship. So here's a few examples. The parable of the day laborers in Matthew 20, 1 through 16, becomes easier to understand when you place yourself at the center of the market in the ancient Near East. Jesus describes a scene in which a landowner goes to the market at 9 a.m. to hire laborers for his fields. At noon, he goes back to the market again, and he hires more workers that were unable to find work that morning. Then he goes back at 3, does the same thing, and then he goes back at 5 and repeats the same thing. When evening came, the landowner instructed his foreman to gather all of the workers and pay them for their labor, beginning with the last ones who were hired down to the first. But they were all paid the same wage. Some of them grumbled because they felt that they had worked harder. The point here was less about fairness in labor and more about the landowner's generosity in giving the same wages to the last ones hired as the first. So the last will be first, and the first will be last. The rich fool. Jesus tells a story about a farmer who had a bountiful harvest. Instead of blessing others with his abundance, he decides to tear down his barns and build bigger barns to store all of that abundance, while telling himself, it's okay, eat, drink, be merry. What happens to him? He dies that night, unable to enjoy what he has hoarded for himself. Jesus calls him a fool for storing treasures on earth without being rich towards God. The great banquet, Luke 14, 12 through 24. While at a banquet hosted by a rich Pharisee, Jesus discusses how inviting only those you know and respect can lead to emptiness. It can be kind of hollow at times. Jesus teaches the lesson to this rich Pharisee, instructing him to invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, when he holds a banquet. Jesus tells him that this will bless him and he will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. So everything that Jesus shares with us while on earth flows from the great commandment. He teaches his disciples in Mark 12, 30 through 31. This is what we call the great commandment. These parables that we just discussed, they're an example of how to live out that great commandment. Everything points back to these two verses. A deeper examination of Mark 12, 30 through 31, and Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9 will shape our view towards stewardship this morning. So like our understanding of the Bible and church doctrine, we often overcomplicate the Christian life. In Mark 12, verses 30 through 31, the disciples asked Jesus what the most important commandment was. Jesus says to them, love the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. This teaching is so important. It's not just in Mark, it's also in Matthew and Luke. Each gospel writer felt it was so important that they gave it a prominent place in their gospel. Through this phrase, Jesus is pointing to the utmost importance of loving God with all that you are and loving your neighbors, which is God's creation. He's also pointing back to the Torah, rooting all Jews hearing this message in a very familiar passage from Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9. If you were Jewish, you would call this passage the Shema. It would be one of the first things you were taught as a Jewish child. It was part of daily prayers for every Orthodox Jew. The disciples were Jewish. They would have known this by heart. So this passage, written by Moses, conveys the privilege and grace of the special relationship the people have with God. One commentator wrote, Moses is careful to impress on the people that this grace cannot be received casually. Let me repeat that again. This grace cannot be received casually. It must be embraced with grateful and unreserved devotion for God. The first two verses, verses 4 and 5, would be hard to miss the importance if you said them twice a day. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Why would Jesus place so much importance on that passage? Let's look deeper. So in verse 4, we notice, "Hear, O Israel." This is a call to the whole community, not just a group of individuals. In the Western world, we have privatized our faith. But here in the Old Testament, in black and white, we see the Word of God telling us that we're to view faith as a community. When we make faith a private matter, we lose so much of what it means to be Christian. Community was meant to be lived out, or Christianity was meant to be lived out in community with one another and with God. We were never meant to go this journey alone. Next, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This isn't declaring a number to the people, but it's declaring that Yahweh is the God of Israel. He alone is God. As so many of the prophets have declared, there's only one God. Do not let your hearts be held captive by the idols of this world. We've been talking about this in Daniel. Verse 5 is critically important to us, to all Christians. If we believe in God and we put our faith in Jesus, then this verse gives us a roadmap of how we are to live this faith according to God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. To fully understand the depth of this verse, we really have to go back to the Hebrew translation. The Hebrew word for heart is leb. The word for soul is nepes. The word for strength is miad. When we hear heart today, we think of romantic love, feelings, emotions, all the ooey gooey stuff, right? The Hallmark movies. In Hebrew, it's different. The word leb refers not only to our center of emotions, it does refer to some of those things, but also to the mind and to our center of thought. That encompasses our entire inner being. Heart and mind are connected, cannot be separated in the Hebrew culture. So I want you to think of this ball as leb. Then nepes literally means throat or gullet. So in the Bible, metaphorically, it refers to appetite or desire, what we eat, what we consume, what we long for. It can also refer to life, as in the act of being alive, or when someone passes away, they are without life or no longer with a soul. If nepes truly means what we have an appetite for, what we desire, and our very life, then it refers to our whole outer being. So here we have leb, and here we have nepes. We're coming together. So then we move on to miad. That's strength. Miad is the Hebrew word for strength, and it can be best understood by thinking about the resources available to a person. This includes physical strength, economic and social strength, even your possessions, such as livestock, tools, a house, everything in it, your family. Here we have miad. So think of this as leb, heart, nepes, soul, and miad. Look how they all fit together to become one. It is inseparable. You cannot be a Christian without all of these things together. Separated, they're weaker and they come apart. But together, it is one whole. So, we have to think of this statement as a whole person. Heart, soul, strength, starting from the inside, your heart, and moving progressively out to strength. So I also have another way for us to think about this in concentric circles. The Bible is giving us this picture of moving in and then outward. Our whole being, everything we think, feel, long for, and own is wrapped up in our love of God in that one big circle. It moves us from the heart and mind outward to our physical being, and then beyond our person to the outside world and our resources and our strength. So when we take into account all of these translational differences and modern ways we read words, here would be my very imperfect attempt at a translation for Deuteronomy 4-5, chapter 6, 4-5. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is the only God and is our Lord. Love the Lord with all your inner being, heart and mind, your whole physical person, plus everything you are and everything you possess. In essence, Moses is calling the people to really put their money where their mouth is. He is challenging them to put their whole being into the declaration that Yahweh is their God through wholehearted and full-bodied love. Friends, this is not just a secure your ticket into heaven kind of faith. Many of us were brought up in an era where we were taught if you raise your hand and you say yes to God, you got your ticket into heaven, and that was enough. This is saying there's so much more. This text is showing us that faith in God demands our entire being, our heart, mind, body, and soul, all we have in a process of transformation into a person that dwells on God, acts on God's commandments, and in turn reflects God to the world. If we identify as Christian, are we really in on this kind of faith? Is that what we signed up for? Or at least what we thought we were signing up for? The remainder of the Shema tells us how to work this great love of God into our daily rhythms of eating and walking and talking to each other. We're also able to pass it down to our children, bind it on our foreheads, write it on the doors of our houses and gates. This kind of command involves one's whole self as well as one's whole community. As Western Christians, are we truly living into this whole-bodied kind of faith that we discuss continually through all of our daily life rhythms? Are we really doing that? Are we impressing this faith on our children so that they in turn can then pass it down to their children? If we're honest, Western society has really watered down faith to this individual experience. We don't like to talk about it much because we don't like conflict. We want to let others reach their own conclusion. This is not a wrong posture, not at all, but if we don't discuss faith at all, how do we pass it on? Do we even talk about Jesus and faith in our homes, let alone outside of them? Tying symbols on our hands, verses 8-9, and binding them on our foreheads moves from our person, what we've been talking about here, to what we're conveying beyond our person. If it's written on your forehead and your hands, other people can see that. In verse 9, write them on your door frames. Moses is saying that all who come and go from your house, who know your family claims as Lord, and they will know that you believe it so much that you made it visible for all to see as they enter your home. This extends beyond your immediate family, and while yes, your family will see it and benefit from that, but it also extends to people outside of your family that you welcome in. Do you see how it becomes this concentric circle, this thing that builds, this thing that we cannot contain, because the love of God, friends, has nowhere to go but outside of us. So, sorry, I lost my place. Write them on your gates. In the ancient Near East, the gate was the portal to the outside world. So you were safe in your home, but that gate When you left it, it was a portal to the rest of the community. And cities were often gated, and that gate provided some security when you were inside of it. And when it was opened, that was a portal to the rest of the outside world. So gates were very symbolic in the ancient Near East. So he is asking us, Moses is asking us, to write these commandments on our gates so that the whole community and people outside of the community can also see. Look at that. Moses is giving us another concentric circle for us to think about in our minds, from self to family, and then further to community. You guys, this is huge. It's so simple, but so huge. You can see the depth of what we are called to do when we declare that Yahweh, or God, is Lord with all our heart, all our soul, and our strength. And we're not to keep this to ourselves. We're to pass it to our children. But please, please do not miss this part. We are all in this together. Scholar Daniel Block says this commitment is to be a public matter. The love for Yahweh must govern all activities inside and outside the house. Furthermore, it will declare to guests and all who pass by that in this household, Yahweh is not only the unseen guest, but also the supreme head. The inscriptions on the gates extend this commitment to the entire community, reminding citizens and visitors alike of Yahweh's rule over the town and the nation as a whole. So this command is for all of us. Moses does not say, "Hear, O you." Do you see that in the Bible? He does not say, "Hear, O you." He says, "Hear, O Israel. Hear, O community." Let's look back now at Mark 12, verses 30 through 31, and look for the parallels. We see Jesus essentially saying the same thing. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Does that sound familiar? I think we just read that. Verse 31, the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. In this verse, Jesus is directly echoing the Shema, verses 6 through 9. The disciples would have been incredibly familiar with this, and Jesus is teaching them that these are the two most important commandments when following God. Paul, in the New Testament, takes this statement one step further in 1 Corinthians 8:6. For us, there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live. And there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came and through whom we live. So Paul is taking this meaty statement and he is tying together the Old Testament and the New Testament. He is tying together Yahweh, or God, with Jesus Christ. It's all one. It's all connected. So if we're going to talk about stewardship, we cannot separate ourselves from community. The Christian faith isn't a departure from material reality. It's God entering that reality, speaking its language, challenging its cruelties, and offering something better for those who believe. Not for someday when we all get to heaven, but for here and now, in the very real places that people live, struggle, and survive. He was speaking to that in the ancient Near East, so it was very identifiable. We've talked about the markets. We've talked about the struggle for survival. But that happens today. Those struggles look different. They sure do. They look different, but they're still here. In an economy that was fragile and rested on a careful balance, talking about the ancient Near East again, that careful balance of honor and shame and unequal power dynamics where vendors could be easily exploited and they were desperate to provide for their families. You can see how this appeal of Jesus' message for the kingdom of God, the last will be first and the first will be last, that had so much appeal. The hope for fairness and mercy was real and palpable for the marginalized. In the early church, the community of believers who called themselves the Way They had to bind together for each other's good. If one member of the faith community fell on hard times, the church body would supply that family with food for the week. If a woman lost her husband and she had no way to provide for her children, the church body would supply their needs. If there were orphans in the community, the church body would take them in and care for them. The community also relied on the generous support of wealthy benefactors to fund these expenses, enabling the support that was provided. The church also relied on these benefactors to provide meeting spaces. Surprise, the early church met in people's homes. It relied on the generosity of benefactors to open their homes up for worship. That also helped care for the invalid. That financial support helped support traveling apostles. It helped fund the very missions that we read about in the New Testament. How do you think that Paul and Timothy and Silas survived? It was wealthy benefactors who took up their cause, supported them when they were in different towns, gave them money for travel, to start churches. It is all tied together. Even when we can't see the mission is over here, and the community is still supporting it. Friends, how amazing is that? God works in all of those little nooks and crannies. So in the ancient Near East, love was not merely an emotion or a pleasant disposition towards another person. I want you to think of love differently, because in the ancient Near East, love was a covenant commitment. It demonstrated through your actions that sought the best interest for other people. That was love in the ancient Near East. So for us to claim a faith that does not involve our heart, soul, and strength, our heart, our soul, and strength, all as one, would be disingenuous. It would be anti the message that Jesus was trying to preach and that the Shema is trying to teach us. For one person, sorry, I have something in my throat. We cannot have one without the other. So if you go back to Mark 12:30-31, love the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. It really is that simple. Our stewardship should be an outflow of this whole person faith and a longing for the best for the people around us. So for us, we can begin right here in our own neighborhood. And we've been talking about that this year, community. We have been reaching out into our neighborhood. How are we blessing the community around our church? If our doors close tomorrow, would anyone in this neighborhood miss us? Are we using the funds that we are given, that we are faithfully stewarding, for mission? Are we using those funds to alleviate suffering in our own community? You've heard how we're supporting Team World Vision. That is beyond our world. You've heard how we're supporting Freedom Fire. That's right in our community in Kansas City. We also do Bless the Block, where we're blessing people right in this neighborhood, feeding them and meeting them right where they are at. So one of my favorite facts about early covenanters, to tie this all back to what it means to be a covenant person, one of my favorite facts about early covenanters is that they weren't interested in arguing about things that weren't essential for our salvation. They just didn't want to argue about those things. What they wanted to do was, while other people were fighting about doctrine and all those things that they thought mattered so much, the covenanters quietly went off about their business and built orphanages. They built schools. They built hospitals, blessing those amongst us and those around us. So it's what shaped who they were. And they would often ask, where is it written? And how goes your walk? Well, I have to tell you, what was written shaped their walk and how they went about it. That is the coolest part about being a covenanter. Something that we should all be very proud of, that heritage, and something that we should hope that we are carrying on to the community around us because that mattered so much to them. So, as we have reached the end of our stewardship campaign and we launch into this new fiscal year that's ahead of us, and in our general meeting in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about all of those exciting things. I want you to consider how you want to be generous and live out love in community. I want to encourage you to spend time this week thinking and praying about all the ways that you can bless others with your heart, with your soul, with your strength, for God's glory and neighbor's good. As we conclude this morning, we will have a time of reflection. So I'd like to invite our prayer partners up to the front. If you feel like you need prayer, there will be some individuals here to pray with you. If you'd like to receive communion and remember the body and blood of Christ, please come forward and do that. Bruce and Reagan would be happy to serve you. And if you'd like to just worship and experience God in all his splendor and glory, please do that. Stand as you feel led.